Okay, so one of the dates on my list of dates to watch is Wednesday, 7th of February 2018, and that is today. It is about 25 to 1 in the afternoon on Wednesday, 7th of February 2018, where I am, which is near Canberra, Australia, the capital city of Australia. And that means over in America, it's still the 6th of February. There's still another 4.5 hours around about until the 7th. Depending whereabouts in America you are. If you're in Texas or Minnesota, it's another 4 hours and 25 minutes. So the 6th of February. And I mentioned yesterday how Jacob, he's one of the boys who I regard as being an angel. Jacob equals 31. And Jacob Wetzling is the boy I'm talking about. He was a murder victim in 1989. Jacob equals 31, and the date Tuesday 6th of February 2018 plus 31 days lands you on Friday 9th of March 2018. And my former partner and my best friend, who I was cut off from by Australia's brutal immigration policies, and I'm talking about immigration and border protection in Australia, who is headed up by a Donald Trump like politician named Peter Dutton. I would call him Australia's little Trump. He's an authoritarian type guy, one of these people you just should not have in charge of a major government department. He's now the head of Home Affairs in Australia, and a big part of the reason I think why Australia is lurching more and more to the right, becoming more and more totalitarian, more and more authoritarian, more and more like a police state, more and more like a Nazi state, is how I would describe Australia as an Australian citizen. And I've been talking about a boy who I used to work with at After School Care, who was born on the 6th of the 9th, 2002, and I thought he seemed, I don't know, there's something about him that reminded me of Jake. Even though I never knew Jake, I reckon this boy was the psychic reflection of Jacob. And he was the boy who told me that Wetzling means weather child. And that was interesting because I already called Jake the Storm Boy 2 years before that. So, who is that boy? Well, he knows who he is. There's a little message here for him. A message of encouragement and support from Jacob to embrace who he is and not be... don't worry about the judgment of people, especially not the judgment of people who are hypocrites. And the world at this point in time is being governed by hypocrites. So you'll notice here, message against authoritarianism. I definitely include Donald Trump as being an authoritarian. I regard Donald Trump, as does Jacob and Nathan. Nathan Breeze is the boy who died on this day 7 years ago, Black Saturday bushfires. Nathan doesn't like Donald Trump because Donald Trump's a climate change denier. And there's quite a few people on that side of the political spectrum, the conservatives, the right-wing Christians, who have taken up climate change denial as something to push in their, they seem to think that's a good way to get into power. If you're not a climate change denier, you're on the left somehow. Actually, you're just a moron. If you are a climate change denier in 2018, you are a moron. Because the science is not that hard to understand, and there's plenty of science that is not hard to understand. And it's pretty comprehensive, and it's pretty overwhelmingly convincing. And yeah, Nathan died in a firestorm, what you'd call a mega fire, which are becoming more common with climate change. And it is 9 years today since Nathan died. Now, I heard an evangelical Christian, a supporter of Donald Trump. A lot of his support does come from the evangelical Christians in the United States. I heard him describe Donald Trump's supporters as snakes. So me, Jacob and Nathan said, awesome, we can be snakes. If that's what an enemy of Donald Trump looks like, count us in, we'll be snakes. No problem. Much better than being a hypocrite. And much better than being a liar, much better than being a propaganda merchant, and a Nazi, which is what Donald Trump is starting to look like. to me, he's starting to look like Adolf Hitler. And you'll hear the name Napoleon mentioned in a second, because that's what he's like. He's becoming a true authoritarian dictator type of leader. Racist, he's divisive. He's not just divisive, he's a propaganda merchant. He's another Hitler. That's my view, that's my opinion. And Jacob is a boy who believes in fairness. So he takes a stand against this kind of crap. And I think the boy who is Jake's reflection would also have some issues with the hypocrisy of Christians. Christian or not, you can be a Christian without being a hypocrite. It is possible, believe it or not. You wouldn't think so, looking at who's running the world today, the Peter Duttons and the Donald Trumps. It's starting to give Christianity a pretty bad name, I think. And it's starting to make it very easy for, in the future, I think they're paving the way for atheism, because everyone's going to look back on Trump and what happened from Trump, and the likes of Peter Dutton and the likes of, Tony Abbott, absolute hypocrite to the extreme. And it's just starting to show that hypocrisy and cruelty, sadism, seems to go hand in hand with religion. Even though there is, I believe, a nice side, a nice spiritual side to religion, it is being massively overshadowed by the dark side at present. Here's why.
I just want to turn to a late-breaking story tonight. President Trump has told top military brass he wants a military parade in Washington, D.C. Originally reported by the Washington Post, the demand from the president was apparently inspired by the Bastille Day parade he attended in France, which he was very impressed by. A military official told the Washington Post, quote, "The marching orders were, I want a parade like the one in France." I'm wondering, as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, what's your reaction to that idea?
I was stunned by it, to be quite honest. We have a Napoleon in the making here, and I believe that we have so many issues around the world in terms of preparing for wars that are ongoing and wars that may be in the offing because of what's happening in North Korea, that I would say that it's really a waste of money, and I think everyone should be offended by his need to always be showing. He's truly Napoleon-like.
You think that parade is more about him? Because I think he would argue, or other maybe Republicans who support the idea, or others who support the idea would say it's a way of honoring our troops. It's a way of showing off their capabilities, and also, show off the country's pride in them.
Any of those kind of military parades that I've seen in the past, it is all about, authoritarian regimes, frankly, with maybe the exception of France. But it's not our style. It's not the way we do business. And I really object to it. And I think it's going to cost a lot of money. So what's really in it for the American people?
Congresswoman Speier, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to bring in CNN military analyst, retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. General Hertling, what went through your mind when you heard the president wants this military parade and that plans are now in the works?
I had to smile, Anderson. It's an interesting request from the president to his military.
Smile, happy smile, or smile, mystified smile?
No, smile, bemused smile. It is something that I'll be honest with you, Anderson, I'll state my bias up front. I dislike parades personally very much. I don't know a whole lot of soldiers who like them. But from a factual basis, as Congressman Speier just said, this is going to cost a lot of money. There are going to have to be a whole bunch of rehearsals. The kind of parade that President Trump envisions coming down Pennsylvania Avenue or Constitution Avenue, asphalt streets are very different than the ones they hold in Red Square or Tiananmen Square or on the cobblestone of the Champs-Élysées. It is interesting that you put a 70-ton M1 tank on those roads and it's going to chew it up. You have to have rehearsals for that. You have to ship the tanks and the equipment in because there aren't very few military bases around Washington, D.C. So I think this is, I was just thinking about what the chairman, how he might have responded to this. I think initially he probably rolled his eyes. I won't speak for General Dunford, but he probably rolled his eyes saying, we've got to delay that and not even bring that up. And then when it kept being brought up, I mean, the military will do whatever the commander-in-chief asks them to do, but it's not a good idea for our military, in my humble opinion.
You said that many people in the service do not like parades. I'm wondering why that is.
Because you feel, first of all, you have to rehearse a lot for them. You have to walk a lot for them. You have to shine your equipment and get your equipment prepared. I mean, you're not going to pull a tank off the tank line at Fort Stewart, Georgia, put it on a rail car, bring it to Washington, and just have it rolling down the street. You got to fix it up. That's part of the essence of a parade, is to look good. And that's what they do in China and Russia and in France to a lesser degree. So there will be a lot of effort, a lot of resources placed on this during a time when the military is doing a whole lot of other things. And I got to tell you, across the board, my take, and I think I speak for a great majority of military members, we don't like parades.
I'm wondering, do you think the idea of this says something about the president himself? I mean, do you think it's more about him than it is about the troops?
Well, I have my thoughts on that, Anderson. I won't say what they are, but here's what I will tell you. It is not in the culture of the United States military. That is not who we are from our founding fathers. The military were civilians that came together and protected our democracy. It's not an overt effort to show how tough you are. We come together, we fight wars when we have to, and we do the kind of things we need to do. And there's not a whole lot of, there shouldn't be, in my view, a whole lot of chest thumping and these overt means of showing how tough you are. As Congresswoman Spears said, that's for tin horn democracies. But having said that, if the president wants a parade, I'm sure the military is trying their best to put one together. I'm glad I'm not wearing the uniform right now, even though I love the military.
General Mark Curling, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Anderson.
Coming up next, a verbal hand grenade the Chief of Staff Kelly lobbed into the immigration debate, suggesting that hundreds of thousands of Dreamers are just too lazy to apply for legal protection. As he put it, quote, some would say they were too lazy to get off their assets. Also tonight, a CNN exclusive interview with former Vice President Joe Biden and his...
So yeah, not racist at all, are they? Not at all. And I think you've got to look at Trump, at what he does in totality. Everything he's doing is, when you put it all together, it's pretty scary. He is reminding me of Adolf Hitler. I'm not saying he's going to be anything like Adolf Hitler, but he could pave the way for some big problems for the world. With his crap. His racist crap. Anyway, I did say something might happen with Trumpy today. And I'm not surprised, because this is a message against authoritarianism. And Trump is very authoritarian. Absolutely. Donald Trump and Peter Dutton are two people who I think the world would be better off without them in politics. Definitely. And as for signs to look out for, warnings to the world, you don't really want to go down this path because it's going to end in a lot of bloodshed and a lot of suffering. Well, there was an earthquake, more than 200 people injured from a 6.4 magnitude earthquake in Taiwan. That struck just before midnight local time in Taiwan on the east coast last night. So just before 3 a.m. where I am. So there's a sign for you. Something to make you go, maybe we shouldn't be going down this road. Maybe it's going to end bad. And like I said, if the enemies of Donald Trump are snakes, count me in. I'll be a snake.